A11y Camp 2024. Peyton, Menzies and Lauren Eisentrager. Hitchhiker's Guide to Accessibility. A11y Camp 2024 is brought to you by our gold sponsors Intopia and ANZ, silver sponsor Canva, and Auslan sponsor SignHow.
To the web accessibility guidelines if you haven't been introduced yet. And then to wrap up, we'll quickly go over the presentations that are happening for the rest of the day to keep you going.
First, let's start with a quote from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, given our theme today. Space is big, really big. You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly big it is. You may think it's a long way down the road to the chemist, but that's just peanuts to space. Space can be a lot like the digital world, more specifically the World Wide Web. There's so much to explore, learn, and achieve, with many areas to traverse. But sometimes, just like in space, our journey can be treacherous and full of obstacles. Digital accessibility is all about reducing those obstacles. Accessibility is commonly referred to as A11y or A11y. It's called A11y because there are 11 letters between the A and the Y. At its most fundamental, digital accessibility means that everyone can use technology equally. It involves the design and delivery of technology that can be used and understood by everyone, regardless of their physical, cognitive, or sensory abilities. Take a moment to think about the technology you used or interacted with in the past week. You might think of your mobile phone, laptop, or computer. What about technology in your car, like Bluetooth or navigation? Maybe you have a smart home appliance or paid for something with a credit card. Technology is everywhere, and we use it for many of our everyday activities. So much so that the United Nations considers access to technology and the internet a human right. When apps, websites, tools, or technologies are designed poorly or without accessibility in mind, then they can create barriers that exclude people from using them. When it comes to creating accessible experiences, we want to consider 5 personal characteristics, including vision, hearing, mobility, speech, and cognition, or neurology. It's important to recognise that although categorised in this manner, each person will interact with technology differently. Anyone can experience an impairment in any of these characteristics, and many of us will, especially as we get older. These impairments can be permanent, but they can also be temporary or situational. For example, a permanent impairment to hearing might be someone who is deaf, a temporary impairment might be someone with an ear infection, and a situational impairment might be a bartender in a loud bar. So while accessibility is a necessity for some, it is useful for all. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, commonly referred to as WCAG, is a single shared standard for web content accessibility that meets the needs of individuals, organisations, and governments internationally. Web content generally refers to the information in a web page or web application, including information such as text, images, or sounds, and code or markup that defines structure and presentation. Having said that, the accessibility guidance in WCAG can also be applied to native mobile apps. Much like the space analogy from before, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines can feel vastly, hugely, and mind-bogglingly big when you're first introduced. So let's break it down a little. WCAG was first published in 1999 by the Web Accessibility Initiative of the World Wide Web Consortium. Version 2.0 was published in 2008, 2.1 was published in June 2018, and most recently, the long-awaited WCAG 2.2 was released in October of 2023. WCAG is made up of 4 major principles. These principles contain a number of guidelines, and these guidelines contain success criteria through which we can assess and improve digital experience for the characteristics I mentioned earlier, including vision, hearing, mobility, speech, and cognition. Before we explore the 4 principles, it's important to remember one thing. A key aspect of WCAG that you may come to understand is that it can often be open to interpretation. Thankfully, we have a few tips that can help with this. Firstly, talk to people. Discussions with your colleagues and peers around specific criterion and the intricacies can ensure an improved collective understanding. We've had a number of these types of discussions at Intopia among the team, and I contribute many of them to my initial learning and understanding of WCAG. Secondly, for each WCAG success criterion, there is an understanding document which goes into further detail about the benefits to certain user groups, some tangible examples, and the sufficient techniques to meet the criteria. Thirdly, try not to get too caught up in the pass or fails of the success criteria, but instead what will provide the best experience for users. Lastly, it's important to remember that we are all still learning. Accessibility is an ongoing journey. The 4 major principles of WCAG follow the acronym PAW, which stands for Perceivable, Operable, Understandable, and Robust.
So the first principle and the P in PAW is perceivable. This principle is to ensure that users can perceive or interpret information, whether or not that's through sight, hearing, or any of the other senses. If someone cannot use one of their senses, they should still be able to get the same information through one of the others. Another way to think about this is to ask yourself, is there any content on my website that a person who is blind, colorblind, is deaf, or hard of hearing won't be able to perceive? Examples of the perceivable principle include providing captions, like we have today, for people that cannot hear, providing audio descriptions for people that cannot see, and making sure meaningful information, including icons and text, have good color contrast. And then moving on to the operable principle, this one is to ensure that all users can interact with and navigate with a variety of tools, as all users don't all interact with the web in the same way. They may use screen readers, navigate with their keyboard, or a lengthy list of other assistive technology. A good way to think about this is to ask yourself, can I navigate using just my keyboard? Being able to navigate with just your keyboard usually means good things for other assistive technologies as well. Examples of the operable principle in action also include making sure all interactive elements like buttons and links can be reached using a keyboard, making sure animations and multimedia can be paused or turned off. This helps people with attention disorders remove distractions from your site so they can continue on to do what they came to the website to do, and giving options for keyboard users to skip over repeated areas like navigation menus, because there's usually a lot of tabs in those areas.
The understandable principle ensures that users can understand the information as well as the operation of the user interface. In other words, the information and operation cannot be beyond the user's understanding. A good question to ask yourself is the content predictable? Is it readable? And are there mechanisms in place to assist users when their input is required? Examples of the understandable principle in action include using clear and concise language that does not exclude certain users, maintaining predictable and consistent navigation across pages, providing a logical focus order of elements for users who navigate with a keyboard or a screen reader, writing helpful error suggestions as well as clear labels and instructions for form fields. The robust principle ensures that users can access content even when they change their settings or the technology that they use to interact with. As we've said previously, users all navigate differently and use a wide range of technology. A good question to ask yourself is the content compatible with various browsers, platforms, and devices? Examples of the robust principle in action include practicing clean, best practice code to convey information, such as the name, role, state, and value of interactive elements. This ensures compatibility with assistive technologies, such as screen readers, screen magnifiers, and speech recognition software. Using live announcements to communicate to screen readers when content updates or changes visually on the page in real time. And being customizable. When sites dictate platforms and browsers, they are openly restricting access to any non-conforming user.
Cool. So now that we've learnt about the 4 principles in the Web Accessibility Guidelines, let's talk about why accessibility is important. For starters, like Lauren mentioned earlier, web accessibility is considered a human right. The web is such an integral part of our lives today that we basically have to work to use it less to keep in touch with our family and ourselves. For that reason, the United Nations marked it as a human right because that's where a lot of the information is these days. Next, having an inaccessible digital product denies the right to equal access and opportunity. With lots of companies moving to digital first or already using a digital first method to share information with customers, we need to make sure that everyone can complete these tasks so they can get on with the rest of their day. In saying that, having an accessible product increases your maximum reach for your work. Like Lauren said earlier, having an accessible product benefits everyone, not just people with disabilities. There are situations where accessibility solutions can help everyone in one way or another. For example, I for one still watch my Netflix shows with the captions or subtitles on, not because I'm hard of hearing, but because I find it easier to enjoy Netflix when I'm not guessing what the actor just mumbled. The last point on that slide is that it is also a legal requirement for governments and essential services to have accessible websites. And we'll go into a bit more on the next slide. Sweet. So what are the policies and laws related to web accessibility in Australia? For the federal government, there's the Digital Service Standards, this set of standards with 10 criteria that covers everything from usability, security, and accessibility. These standards were originally released in 2016, with version 2 being released at the end of last year. Existing services who follow the Digital Service Standards have until July 2025, so next year, to make sure that they conform with this latest version. Out of the 10 criteria, there are 2 that I want to bring your attention to, as they're the ones that link to accessibility the most. These are number 2, know your user, and number 3, leave no one behind. The Know Your User criterion requires teams to research and develop a deep knowledge of their users and the context in which they will use the service. By conducting user research, people might be thinking that that's not quite accessibility. You are right, it is a bit more usability, but usability and accessibility go hand in hand when you're building new products. And then the leave no one behind criterion, this is to ensure a deliberate effort is made to ensure that the product is inclusive and useful for all. This includes complying with WCAG and the Australian Government Style Manual. On top of that, state and territory governments may also be required to follow other legislation like the National Transition Strategy, which was originally run between 2010 and 2014, and any other state policies and regulations. And to round us up, the big one, the Disability Discrimination Act. It has been in effect since 1992, and it makes it unlawful to discriminate against a person because of their disability. This act covers people who have both a temporary or a permanent disability. The Disability Discrimination Act was put in place to ensure that essential services, like the services provided by the Australian government, are provided in a non-discriminatory and accessible manner. I will also mention there are other policies around the world that relate to accessibility, and they may come up now and again, but to not overwhelm everyone, let's just stick to those for now.
Given all this then, which benchmark should you use? The most common benchmark is the one that we've already introduced you to, and that of WCAG. There are 86 testable success criteria across 3 conformance levels, level A, level AA, and level AAA. The most widely accepted standard is WCAG 2.2 to a level AA, which means all level A and level AA criteria. In total, there are 55 of them. Having said this, it does not mean that you shouldn't strive to meet some AAA success criteria. Some of them are quite simple to meet. For example, success criterion 2.4.9, link only. This criterion asks that the purpose of a link can be identifiable by the link text alone, which means no more click here or read more links. Hooray! You might be asking yourself, how do I know if what I've done is right? Well, there are a few things to do to determine if your content is accessible. Firstly, the WCAG Evaluation Methodology Report tool can be used to create a structured report of accessibility evaluation findings. It does not perform automated checks, but it does allow you to capture your findings properly through a guided form. When it comes to evaluating your content, an accessibility audit will help identify how compliant your content is to the WCAG guidelines. There are a few simple tests you can run yourself. For example, put your computer in high contrast mode via the settings. Can you see everything? Are links, buttons, and meaningful elements still visible? Navigate using only your keyboard. Can you see where you are on the page? Do you get trapped anywhere? Does the order of elements flow in a logical way? Use a built-in screen reader and run it over your website. Does everything you hear make sense and match what is presented visually? There are free screen readers that you can use for this. Mac and iPhone users have VoiceOver built into their machines. Windows users have Narrator or can download a screen reader called Non-Visual Desktop Access, also known as NVDA. While you can conduct an audit yourself, getting some outside help can ensure that you're provided with the correct solutions to resolve any barriers that do exist. Lastly, but most importantly, invest in usability testing alongside people with disability. Technical compliance alone does not always equate to a usable or user-friendly product. User research and usability testing should be practiced regularly and can provide valuable insights that may surprise you.
Cool. To make accessibility in WCAG a little less scary, we have 5 quick accessibility wins to help your team gain some accessibility momentum. First, if you're using images, make sure that you give them a text alternative. This allows screen readers to announce a description to users. If there isn't a text alternative, they may hear nothing, or they'll hear the URL path to the image, which means they either don't know the image exists or they get information that's not useful to them. The next one is make your links descriptive. Lauren touched on this earlier. Avoid labeling links as click here. This helps the screen reader user, as one way they can navigate is by getting a whole list of links for the page. And if they all say click here or read more, that's not very helpful because what's the first click here compared to the 7th click here? So it's going to be hard for them to know what's going on without the surrounding context. So providing meaningful links helps them, and it also helps everyone else to know where they're going to go when they click on that link. Then we have don't convey information just with color. Recent statistics suggest that about 2% of the population, including 1 in 12 men in particular, have some form of color blindness. Using color to convey things like status would mean that users are excluded from understanding this information. For example, there's add to cart buttons where they just turn green to tell you that it's been added to the cart. There's nothing wrong with this, but you need another form to tell people the same thing. So it might be changing the label text to say added, or a little tick icon to portray that it was successful. So yeah, if you were using color to portray information, you can include an icon, text, or patterns to make it understandable for everyone. The next one, structure your content with headings. Including headings in your text content that are visible and descriptive helps section out your content and make it easier to read. No one enjoys scrolling through giant walls of text, and adding semantic headings also help those with assistive technology like screen readers jump to the content they want to read. And the last one, number 5, is to make sure your content is simple and easy to read. No one likes having to read something more than twice to understand what it means. So keeping your content clear and simple will ensure that everyone can understand this information. On top of this, avoiding abbreviations and jargon makes this information easier to understand for people who might be new to the topic.
If the world of accessibility in WCAG is still boggling your mind, then you are not alone. That's why we've provided some helpful resources to continue your journey with. The WCAG 2.2 map outlines an overview of WCAG in a visual format, which can help if you're a visual learner like myself. It's available in a number of different languages. Intopia's YouTube channel has a variety of short and long-form videos discussing everything from accessibility fundamentals, interesting webinars, and the new WCAG 2.2 Criteria at a Glance series. Transcriptions and captions are available. The Accessibility Not checklist is an interactive resource that provides instructions on how designers, developers, and content writers can conform to WCAG success criteria. You can find all of these resources on the Intopia website at intopia.digital/resources.
Well, that's all the accessibility information we have to share with you for now. Let's quickly talk about what else is happening today at A11y Camp. If you've already analysed the program, you will already know we have keynotes from Adrian Roselli and Donna Purcell, plus 10 other presentations to keep you learning about accessibility today. After all that, the fun doesn't end. There is a networking event starting from about 5 p.m, so stick around if you can. If you wish to dress up, there is a tropical theme, but don't worry, we will still let you in if you're not dressed to the theme. Sweet. So that wraps up our Hitchhiker's Guide to Accessibility. Thank you for joining us so bright and early in the morning, and we hope you still have lots of brain capacity for the rest of the sessions today. The program for the rest of the day can be found at a11ycamp.com.au/program. That's Ali like A11y. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
A11y Camp 2024.